Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. This show is about Plymouth County real estate. We'll be talking about the November numbers in recordings at the Registry of Deeds. This is our December 2018 show, our last show in the calendar year, and I'll go right to the numbers. As far as sales of property for the month of November, there were 916 deeds recorded in November, less than the 971 recorded in October, down 3% from the 985 deeds in last year, November. But for the first 11 months of calendar year 18, we're about even with sales for last year. Mortgages are a different story. While there's still many people taking out mortgages for the purchase of property, a lot less people are taking out refinancing mortgages based upon the fact that the rates have gone up and they're in as good a spot as they can be. There were 1,516 mortgages recorded in November, less than the 1,734 in October of this year, but down 17% from the 1,834 last November. And for the first 11 months in calendar year 18, we're down about 9% over last year. We always talk about foreclosures, particularly since the foreclosure crisis of 2008, which really threw a real twist into the real estate market. And while we're mostly out of that problem, there still are foreclosure deeds going on record. For the month of November, there were 43 people that lost their property to foreclosure deeds in Plymouth County, less than the 57 foreclosure deeds in October, 14% higher than last November. However, for the first 11 months of calendar year 18, 14% lower than last year at this time. And the precursor that we see at the registry to someone losing their property to a foreclosure deed is a foreclosure notice, is an order of notice that comes in that they receive that shows someone's really in trouble and they ought to get a housing counselor and see if they can modify their loan if they haven't done it already. We always advise people facing these issues to reach out to a federal housing counselor to try to save your property. There were 61 foreclosure notices recorded across the county in November, less than the 82 in October, 66% less than last November, and down 13% over the first 11 months of the year. Lenders are getting caught up with people that have been delinquent, and I advise you, if you have, not to wait around. The longer you wait, the more difficult it is to solve the problem. You're going to see a listing of foreclosure deeds and notices for all 27 communities in Plymouth County, from Abington to Whitman. Brockton and Plymouth continue to be communities hit hardest by foreclosure deeds and foreclosure notices, but you see a listing of all again, 27 communities, and certainly over the past, every single community has had an issue. We have a great guest coming in the next segment, Tim White, the first Assistant Registrar of Deeds, who will be talking about a number of things, including the fact that we've achieved the ability to record over the internet Liancourt documents. Our next training room session will be Thursday, January 3rd, the first Thursday of every month. We have a free hands-on online training program for how to search the internet site more efficiently, and we always have people come in, you get your own computer, and Christine Richards from our IT department will take you through that, and you'll learn a lot. Be aware that there's a property fraud alert available on our internet, that if you sign up any notice against you, you'll get an email. Be aware that there are people out there that are trying to get you to commit to things or take advantage of you because of your real estate. And as an example, there's a deed scam that they'll tell you, sign up with us, we'll get you a copy of your deed for $83. Currently, it's a California company doing that. And you, instead of paying $1 like you would at one of our offices, you pay $83. And it's very frustrating to us, but people still sign up for that. And again, we're going to roll into segment 2 with Tim White talking about some of our most recent accomplishments. So we'll see you in the next segment.
This is the story of a boy who was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. It made him feel uncomfortable. One day, he found out he had something called autism. His family got him help, and slowly, he learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to the Register's Report. Again, my name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. And now in this segment of the show, we always try to do something educational in nature. We've had surveyors, real estate attorneys, many realtors, assessors, and everyone involved in the real estate business. And sometimes we have somebody from our office that comes in and we talk about some of our recent accomplishments at the registry. And we're doing that today with Tim White. Tim has been a guest before. Tim is the Assistant Register of Deeds for Plymouth County. And I know the last time you were on, we were talking about some projects that were on their way to completion, but not quite finalized.
Correct. We actually have had quite a few accomplishments since the last time I was on, which is not that long ago. So
yeah, so I thought it would be good at the end of the year show to talk about some of the things we've concluded over the last month or so.
Great.
So let's talk about electronic recording for Liancourt documents.
That was something that we weren't sure we were ever going to see in our lifetime,
Right.
John.
Right.
Liancourt is a complicated division of the Registry of Deeds and requires specialized training and obviously a separate department. The fact that we are one of the first, not the first, but one of the first registries to offer electronic recording of land court documents is quite an accomplishment that we should be proud of.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize till they try to record a homestead that there are two sides to the Registry of Deeds. There's the recorded side, and if you look at your tax bill or your deed, it would have a book and page number on it. That's recorded land. If it has a certificate number on it, on your tax bill or your document, that would show that for some reason over the years your property had to go before a judge, whether it be a state issue, whether it be a boundary dispute,
yeah.
and then it would have been entered into Liancourt, and a judgment would have been made and a certificate issued on that property.
And then all the titles subsequent thereto
Right.
relate back to the
Right.
certificate.
So about 90% of our documents are on the recorded land side. However, that 10% is something we really wanted to do electronic recording because it's not something we can do in either one of our two satellite offices.
Right.
As a reminder to the public, we have a satellite office, an office that just moved from 155 West Elm Street to 32 Belmont Street.
That's another one of our accomplishments,
Sure,
John, and
sure.
that was quite a good effort to get that registry satellite moved over there and get the space built out to our specifications and up and running without a lot of glitches. It went
Yeah,
through pretty smoothly.
worked out pretty
To do
smoothly.
it over a 3-day weekend, we took advantage of was it the Veterans Day holiday?
Yes, it was.
And took advantage of the fact that we were going to be closed for an extra day to be able to make sure we could make that move from one side of Brockton to the other and get up and running and be ready to go on Tuesday morning for business.
Yeah, and we also have a satellite in Rockland that we've had for years over on Hingham Street in the AAA Plaza.
Right.
Near Bella's Restaurant, which most people recognize. And as the Register of Deeds for the county, I get sworn in once as the Register of Deeds for the county, but also once as an assistant land recorder of the Liancourt, sworn in by Chief Justice of the Liancourt every 6 years.
And that will,
And have to do bonds for both jobs. That's coming up.
so that with your recent reelection, congratulations, Register
Yeah,
Buckley,
yeah.
that you will be sworn in once again on January 2nd in at the Liancourt.
And as you mentioned, the most complicated part of real estate law is Liancourt.
Yeah.
They have their own separate regulations, rules that are different from recorded land, and the fact that we were able to achieve the ability to electronically record documents over the internet for Liancourt is something, you're right, I don't think a few years ago people anticipated would be able to do it.
And it's a wonderful service to provide to the residents of Plymouth County.
Right. And submitters from all over the place.
Submitters all over the state,
Yeah,
for that matter, all
yeah,
over the country,
yeah, sure,
actually.
right.
But primarily, we're here to serve the residents of Plymouth County, and it certainly makes it a lot easier for an attorney who has a law office up in Hingham not to have to drive all the way down to Plymouth to record a document at the Registry of Deeds in the Liancourt. He can now do it from the comfort of his or her office.
So do you want to talk a little bit about how electronic recording works, since you're the keeper of the contracts for all those companies?
Well, I mean...
And how many do we have now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, first we should step back for a second
Yeah.
and talk that we have actually been
Right.
electronically recording on the unregistered side, on the recorded side, for
About 10 years.
About 10 years. And that was, that's certainly just technology. It's the
Right.
changes in technology that allow you to do those kinds of things and offer those kinds of services. So we've had a pretty good run recording recorded land documents electronically, but now to be able to do it with the Liancourt. And the nice thing about this next step is that we were able to benefit from the experience that we went through first go around in electronic recording. And we already have the companies in place that can help facilitate the third party that facilitates the actual recording. Got a company called Simplifile. We have a company called is it CSI?
CSC.
CSC.
Yeah.
And
ERX.
ERX is the third one. So we work with them, and they make sure that all of the documents are in order from the submitter, that the fees are being paid, and they have their agreements with the submitters being typically attorneys, real estate title companies, sometimes banks, and the like. And they have their accounts with them, and everything gets properly funneled right through so that it's just like you're at the desk, right at the counter.
So we have, for anybody that comes into our building, after you come through our corridor, which has a lot of our great Plymouth County history, on the right-hand side as you walk in, a display case of the history of recording. And the history of recording could have started, because when we did the research with a display committee, we went back to the early writing days in cuneiform and
The quill.
in the writings from the Greeks and the Egyptians, but we couldn't fit all that history into that display case. So we started with surveyors, and because in order to designate land, you need to identify how big it is and boundaries. Yeah. And apparently, surveying would go back all the way back to Rome and Egypt also. And we have a picture of George Washington up on the wall. He, along with other presidents, were surveyors. The four presidents on Mount Rushmore, 3 of them were surveyors in their previous life. The only one being Teddy Roosevelt, who most people would think because of his talent. He was a surveyor, but we go from the development of surveyors, and we have a sample rod and links in there and a sample compass, to the quill pen when people were starting to copy over the deeds, to the development of the typewriter, to the development of the original scanners, which produced, reverse ink copies, to the development of the scanner that we would use more like today, to computers, which wasn't as a scale of things from the beginning of the county at 1685 to current is recent, and
To electronic recording.
into electronic recording.
Yeah,
And
it's quite a history.
at the bottom of that display, and this was done, we opened our building 14 years ago, it said, and now we have electronic recording, and we know it'll not be the last change in technology in the future. And since then, we've done other things, including Liancourt e-recording.
Yeah. Yep.
So-
a lot of progress. A lot of
And
progress
there will
been
be
made.
things in the future, as we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
People, realtors are ahead of private business, their tablet use and all those
Yeah, and
kinds
it's not only that, I mean, whether you're operating off a mobile device or something like that, but we're also, working on things like taking the records that we have,
Right.
these historic records that go back to the 1600s, and putting them into a condition that is readily usable and easily usable by the public. We've got a transcription program going forward. So we're trying to get all of the old records that were in the old handwritten transcribed into the typewritten, and being able to see those documents on the screen at the same time. It's a great service again. It preserves our history, and
Right.
Especially with the upcoming big 400th anniversary of the arrival of the Mayflower, it'd be great to have this kind of history readily available for the public.
So let's talk about something that just came to final this past week, the Linked Index project. Want to describe that a little
Sure.
bit?
Well, that's another example,
Yeah.
I think. The Linked Index project took our we had, first off, let's talk about what a linked index is. A linked index is very important in the real estate industry, because what it does is it links the current ownership of property back in time. So it goes all the way back, so that as a title examiner or an attorney can review the title to a property, they can make sure that the title is good, that it's clean, that there aren't any liens or undischarged mortgages on the property. Up until this year, our linked index only went back to 1950 or so, in that neighborhood. And our goal was to link all of our documents right back to the founding of Plymouth County in 1685. And it took a significant amount of work. You're talking about millions and millions of documents. But we can now say that we have actually gone back to 1685, and the properties can be linked all the way back.
So you actually, when they go online and enter a name in an era, a year, they can actually see the original recording as well as the index information.
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
a great.
it is. It's a
that's
great
great thing.
service. Great service.
So last but not least, I know you've been having some fun with some of our colonial records. Every month, when we do the newsletter, we bring one forward. And I know this month is one that's gotten a lot of people's attention. Do you want to describe that?
Sure. I mean, we're the Registry of Deeds, and,
Right.
and typically what we see records of properties being transferred, and typically in this day and age, you have to take a mortgage out on your house so that you can finance the purchase of your property or the improvements or whatever it might be. We found a record back in 1639 where they weren't mortgaging a house, they were mortgaging a cow. And a brown cow, as they called him, that came over from England by the name of Berry. And he was owned by a gentleman by the name of John Combs, I think. And he must have borrowed some money by a fellow by the name of Thomas Prince. You can tell us who Thomas Prince was.
Thomas Prince was one of the colonial governors.
Which also means that he was
In
one
charge
of
of the
the
real estate, too. Yeah.
registers of deeds. It turns out that in this record that relates about this particular transaction, that apparently this wasn't the first time that this cow had been loaned out as security for a loan from Mr. Combs. It was the second time. So he was a used cow, as opposed to a used car.
Yeah, used car lender.
Yeah. So.
And we had that at one of my housing partnership meetings. Once I told them the story, that's one of the lenders came up with that.
Used car lender.
Used car lender.
So
thanks. I think that's a good way to let people know that with what we talked about before, that a couple of those major projects are completed.
Yep.
And people can go right onto our website, PlymouthDeeds.org, and search that themselves. It makes it easier for them, for genealogists as well as for people that are tracking the history way back in time, and do it in a very efficient and easy way.
Yep, it is.
Great, thanks again.
You bet.
Okay.
Or that the projections would be flood next Thursday?
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency.
So again, welcome back to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. And Tim White, the first assistant at the Register of Deeds, did a very good job updating you on some of our most recent changes, particularly electronic recording in Liancourt, and the ability now to search all of the county records back to the founding of Plymouth County, which was in 1685, first document being 1686. So in this segment of the show, we always try to do something a little lighter in nature, talk about some of our great Plymouth County history. We did talk about some of our colonial history with Tim White, and those things are always very interesting and a lot of fun. For the holidays in December, Hanukkah started on December 2nd. Pearl Harbor Day was the 6th of December. The Christmas holiday is the 25th, and other celebrations of the holiday season within the month. We're going to talk about a few of our notable land record collections that relate to the Christmas holiday. First, you're going to see an image of one of our records from about Edward Rowe Snow. He was a very famous author and historian from Marshfield. He wrote over 100 books, including stories of shipwrecks, storms, pirate and buccaneers on the Atlantic coast, and wrote a lot about the lighthouses of New England, and was a very much a dedicated supporter of the Boston Harbor Islands. But he's well known for carrying on the tradition of the flying Santa. So many years ago, transportation out to the Harbor Islands and the lighthouses was a lot more difficult. So he would dress up in a Santa costume and fly a plane out over the Harbor Islands, in the lighthouses in particular, and drop presents to the children of the lighthouse keepers. Again, he was a dedicated preservationist and lover of the Harbor Islands, and many people credit him for saving Fort Warren in the 50s. In 2000, a plaque in his honor was dedicated on George's Island for his contribution to the Harbor Islands. Next, we're going to show you a notable land record for Reginald Aubrey Fessendon. It was the Brant Rock section of Marshfield, and he was involved in the historic transatlantic two-way broadcast, the first radio broadcast that went over the ocean, over the Atlantic Ocean, in the first one to Scotland. He was a Canadian-born engineer, and he broadcast from his Brant Rock station on property owned by Mrs. Olive Blackman, and he produced a radio broadcast of music and religious music in particular, and Silent Night it was heard as far away on ships in the Caribbean. It was a 420-foot radio tower known as Fessendon Tower. It was dismantled in 1917. However, at the base of where the tower stood is still a plaque memorializing the event. He had previously worked for the National Weather Bureau and actually worked as a chemist for Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, as you know, did a lot of experimentation in Brockton. And after he moved to New London, Connecticut, he had a very successful career in underwater sound. And last but not least, Santa Claus. Not the real Santa Claus, but a gentleman who was a businessman in Brockton, James Edgar, had originally came over to America from Edinburgh in Scotland, and he opens Edgar's department store on Main Street in Brockton. He had previously dressed up as a sea captain, clown, and George Washington to entertain the children of shoppers. However, in December 1890, he decided to dress up as Santa Claus based upon a cartoon by Thomas Nast. Thomas Nast was the cartoonist that actually designed the donkey for the Democratic Party and the elephant for the Republican Party. And he did a cartoon of a very jolly Santa Claus, and that carried forth to this day. So when you see a Santa Claus at Mason's or any other department store, it started on Main Street in Brockton. So after he did this, children came from Boston and Providence to see him. It was a very exciting time. The idea transferred again to other department stores around the country, and a city park is named for him in Brockton, not so much for his commercialism, but for his dedication to the children. And there's a plaque in his honor on Main Street across from where his department store was. So I want to thank Lorna Green Baker and Christine Richards from my office for helping me put this show together. I want to thank the folks at PAC TV for helping us share with people what is, for most people, information about their prime asset, their home. I want to thank Ben Alexander and Keith Hughes for helping with the show today. I want to wish everyone a very happy holiday season and in a very beginning of a happy new year, and I'll see you next year. Thank you.